House Republicans have formed a new subcommittee to look into the events surrounding January 6th. This subcommittee, which will fall under the Judiciary Committee's purview, will be chaired by Georgia Republican Congressman Barry Loudermilk, who spent much of the last Congress attempting to discredit the work of the original January 6th committee. Loudermilk is known for providing a tour to a group of people the day before the attack on the Capitol that included one of the rioters. In a statement, House Speaker Mike Johnson said the committee's purpose was to expose the false narratives peddled by the politically motivated January 6th Select Committee and will uncover the full truth that is owed to the American people. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland. He is ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman, so good to see you this morning. We have a lot to get to, but let's just start there with this new effort to investigate the events surrounding January 6th and its aftermath, including the work of a committee on which you served. What is your response here? What is the purpose of this committee in your estimation?
Well, it was a surprise to us when we heard about it last night. After all, most of the Republicans from swing moderate districts that the GOP needs to hang on to want to move away from the horrific politics for them of January 6th and now these atrocious pardons of Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, and other violent extremists. And so they don't want to talk about it anymore. And we were amazed that they would open up a whole new channel for revisiting the very clear and uncontested events of January 6th. Apparently, Donald Trump was demanding it of Mike Johnson, which is why they created it. So they took Barry Loudermilk, who essentially had failed in his mission over the last 2 years to try to lay a glove on the January 6th bipartisan committee report in the House Administration Committee, and they relocated him, moving him over to the Judiciary Committee. I take it that Chairman Stiles of House Admin didn't want anything more to do with it. But in any event, look, we have an 800-page report that was done on a bipartisan basis with more than 1,000 interviews. We looked at 1 million pages of documents, and nobody has successfully contradicted a single factual statement in the report that was produced by our select committee. So they've had a few years to try to come up with something, but nobody believes that Antifa did it. Nobody believes that the FBI organized it. And so I don't know exactly where they're going, but I would say, since they know Donald Trump well and he's the one who wants the subcommittee, he should be the first witness there, because he has never told anybody his side of the story, and we would love the opportunity to question him.
Seems like an unlikely witness to be called, though, Congressman. So you mentioned the pardons, of course, the blanket pardons, 1,500 or so issued by Donald Trump throughout anyone involved with January 6th, including, you mentioned, the leaders of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, as well as those convicted of violent crimes, including assaulting police officers. You've said before you believe this was just undermined the judicial system. Tell us more about that, but also your worries that these people, these violent offenders, are back on the streets and now know, potentially, that if they commit another violent crime, well, the president would have their back.
Well, you got it. They were not pardoned because they were innocent. They were not pardoned because they were without due process. They were pardoned basically because they are guilty and they are unrepentant, and they have proven themselves to be completely loyal foot soldiers of Donald Trump and a reserve army of political shock troops who will be there for him to do essentially whatever he wants. It's a very dangerous and unprecedented situation in American democracy that Donald Trump has just imposed on everybody.
So, Congressman, on the subject of pardons, we should note that in President Biden's final hours in office, he issued a series of them, including to those involved with the January 6th committee that we were discussing, which includes you. So were you seeking a pardon? What is your reaction to receiving one?
No, I wasn't seeking a pardon. We are covered by the fact that we didn't do anything wrong. There's no criminal offense. We just did our jobs and upheld our oaths of office and defended the democracy. And we were protected in any event by the speech and debate clause. However, Donald Trump was continually saying he was going to prosecute the heads of our Benny Thompson and Liz Cheney. And So I don't blame President Biden for what he did, but the pardons that took place in the morning on January 20th were pardons of innocent people who were being protected from vindictive prosecutions, political prosecutions being promised by Donald Trump. The people pardoned in the afternoon were guilty, who had every benefit of due process, and who violently assaulted our police officers, bloodying them, hospitalizing them. I spoke yesterday to Mrs. Sicknick, Gladys Sicknick, who's the mother of Brian Sicknick, an officer who was brutally assaulted by people who were pardoned by Donald Trump. And, it would be very fitting if Donald Trump would go out to Arlington National Cemetery to visit the grave of Brian Sicknick, and members of Congress who are applauding and cheering these people who have come back to say that they want revenge and retaliation. Go and visit some of the graves of the people who lost their lives on that day, and go and talk to some of the families of officers whose lives have been turned upside down by that violent assault on our constitutional order.
Yeah, we had Officer Michael Fanone join us yesterday describing in detail the violent acts committed by someone who has now been pardoned by the president. Ranking member on the House Judiciary Committee, Congressman Jamie Raskin. Congressman, we thank you as always. We'll speak to you again soon.
You bet.